Episode 4. Esse non vedere. Acting without being seen. As you probably already have gathered, the Wallenbergs played both sides during the Second World War, and this became a bit too obvious when the United States accused the brothers Jacob and Marcus Wallenberg and Stockholm's Enskilda Bank of acting as a front for the Bosch Group all throughout the war. This came to be known as the Bosch Affair. The aim of the Wallenberg brothers was making profitable international investments by protecting the German subsidiaries from confiscation in enemy territory. The accusations led to the banks and the Wallenberg brothers' assets in the US being blocked, and the American authorities arguing for a blacklisting of both the brothers and the bank. As of an event beginning in 1939, they had acquired exactly 8 of Bosch's companies in neutral countries and a majority of the shares in the American Bosch Company, American Bosch Corporation, ABC. The business settlement was presented as such that the parent company was granted the right to assign buyers if the companies were to be resold. Bosch, in turn, had undertaken to help ensure that Stockholm's Enskilda Bank, SEB, in Germany, could invest the German government securities for 15 million Swedish krona, Kruger bonds, which remained in the remnants after the Kruger crash. In addition to this, Bosch gave a premium of 2.7 million to SEB. The acquisition of ABC was by far the largest deal, and the purchase price was the equivalent of 12.4 million Swedish krona. In practice, the Bosch Group, which was part of the IG Farben Group, came to have full control over the subsidiary through the business agreement. The Wallenberg brothers' legal representation following this arrangement, in the dispute with the United States, was a man called Allen Dulles. Allen Dulles was the chief of the Office of Strategic Services in Switzerland, which was an American intelligence agency that later became the CIA. Allen Dulles would, after the Second World War, become the head of the CIA. Allen Dulles' brother, John Foster Dulles, who also had advised the Wallenbergs in the Bosch affair, would later become the U.S. Secretary of State. After the Bosch affair and the negotiation between the United States and the Wallenberg brothers, the U.S. representatives declared that the Wallenberg brothers were saved more by the start of the Cold War rather than by any improvement in their business ethics. The relationship between the Wallenbergs, IG Farben, and the political leadership of Germany was not quite as uncomplicated as many might think. The individuals connected to IG Farben was during this period the core of the deep state. At this point, it shouldn't shock you that the deep state actors were behind the rise and fall of Adolf Hitler. The role of Swedish interests behind the emergence of the Nazis was of such a magnitude that not many people yet understand this fact. Furthermore, IG Farben's American subsidiaries, the American Bosch Company, among others, had very influential American interests connected to them. This was probably the main reason why the United States and the Allies were forced to release Wallenbergs after the Bosch affair without any repercussions. Still, if there's any remaining doubts in your mind about these things not being coincidences, just the result of chance and random events, don't worry, because there is more. So much more. Hermann Wilhelm Göring was born in 1893 in the Bavarian town of Rosenheim. His father was in the military, and Hermann followed in his father's footsteps, where at 16 years old, he left his cadet school, Berlin-Lichterfeld, as a course leader and enlisted in the Prussian army. A few years later, he became one of Germany's first fighter pilots and commanders of the infamous Richthofen Squadron, the Red Baron's Air Squadron. After the end of the First World War, Göring continued to fly, now as a pilot for the Swedish start-up company, Svensk Lufttrafik AB, in the free port outside Stockholm. Svensk Lufttrafik AB is today called Scandinavian Airlines System and is owned by the Wallenberg Company, Investor. One day Göring is given the task of flying a Swedish count, named Erik von Rosen, to Rockelsta Castle. At Rockelsta Castle, Göring met von Rosen's sister-in-law, Karin von Kantzow, and the acquaintances led to their marriage in 1923. And until the Second World War, Göring frequently socialized with his new Swedish relatives, and the Count von Rosen often visited him in Germany. Count Erich von Rosen was a Swedish honorary doctor, patron, explorer, ethnographer, and prominent figure in the Swedish upper class. Erich von Rosen was an active Nazi during the 1930s and 1940s as one of the founders of the National Socialist Bloc, which had strong Nazi values. He had adopted the swastika as a personal owner's brand, by his own admission, in the early 1900s, which was at least 20 years prior to the emergence of the Nazis in Germany. Göring had noted the swastika during his stay in Sweden, at von Rosen's castle, which had been forged into a metal piece on his fireplace. In November 1923, Karin and Hermann Göring moved to Germany. That same year, Göring participates in what came to be known as the Beer Hall coup in Munich. The coup would force out the incumbent government, and the insurgents would take power. However, the coup eventually failed, and Göring was forced, despite gunshot wounds after the coup attempt, to flee to Italy. For his injuries, he was treated with high doses of morphine, which became the start of an escalating addiction. Göring returned to Sweden in 1924, where he was subsequently committed to treatment for his addiction. Adolf Hitler, who was wounded during the coup, escaped immediate arrest and was spirited off to safety in the countryside. After 2 days, he was arrested and charged with treason. Hitler was found guilty of treason and sentenced to 5 years in Landsberg prison, where he dictated Mein Kampf to fellow prisoners, Emil Maurice and Rudolf Hess. On the 20th of December 1924, having served only 9 months, Hitler was released. Göring was kept safe in Sweden. He would later stay at Langbro Hospital in 1925. He was placed in Ward 7, where only the wealthiest of patients were housed. This was an environment best described as an old-fashioned men's club, with leather armchairs, thick rugs, and a scent of cigar. And Hitler got 9 months, for treason. Maybe Hitler and Göring had some powerful friends in high places. One can only speculate. The Wallenberg family, through their investment company, Investor, owns another company, which was at that time called ASEA. In 1933, when Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany, ASEA decided to change its logotype. The logotype of ASEA was until that time a swastika. You can't even make this shit up. We might just say that the Hitler Project may have been under foreign influence right from the start, but didn't pan out quite according to plan. The Cold War proceeded, with the Wallenbergs controlling both regular surveillance, via the telecommunications infrastructure, as well as via the backdoors built into Crypto AG's cryptography machines. Again, control of information is both a massive strategic advantage and an important tool for controlling public opinion. You might think that this is ancient history. But in order for us to understand where we are, and why the world seems to have gone completely crazy, we have to understand our history. Now, I bet you want to know what has happened since. Join us in the next episode, as we venture on through history, shining new light on historic events, and what really went on behind the scenes. Thank you for listening.